Anybody that knows me, like really knows me, knows about Jake and knows the impact he's had on my life. They know that I loved him and, I still love him, and I am still full of grief about it, as I'm sure you are.
Welcome to A Place of Yes. I'm your host, Heather Straughter, a podcast about how I moved through my darkest hour. And all I can say is I dug deep, figured out where I was and where I wanted to be. And for me, the answer was in a place of yes. Welcome to the show. But first, it's time for our review of the week. May this touch the hearts and souls of listeners and remind us all to be grateful for our many blessings. Very powerful to hear firsthand how these folks chose to make their most painful and tragic loss into serving others in need. Excited to hear more. What I loved about that review is that it talks about the reminder to be grateful for our blessings. And it's something that you would think that I do all the time, but I don't. And we all have to remember, whether we've suffered loss or not, to just be grateful for what we have and the people that are in our lives, and to truly see the good and not just focus on the bad. So I love that review. Hi, I'm Heather Straughter, and I am here today with Cait Carson, who is actually Cait Dingman now, but she will always be Cait Carson to me. This is a really exciting conversation that I've been looking forward to having for quite some time. And for those of you who've been following the show, a lot of the conversations have been with families that have been impacted by Jake's Help from Heaven, families I've known for a long time. And Cait is a little bit of a different guest. She is someone who I have known entirely through Jake. I first met her when Jake started preschool at Prospect School, and she was assigned as his one-to-one. I don't know, Jake was 3 years old, I think. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was a bundle of nerves because Jake, up until that point, got all of his therapies at home. Mm-hmm. Everything was just really safe, right? Because everyone came to the house. They were expecting me to drop him off and leave him. Yeah. And they clearly didn't know.
Right.
Remember in the beginning, I did not. I just stayed in the little room and stalked the teachers.
Well, I didn't know that because it was a one-way mirror.
Oh, so you didn't know?
I had no.
Oh, no, I didn't leave.
I mean, I assumed you were in there, but I don't,
So Jake got a one-to-one, and it was Cait. And instantly, and I think you know this because we've talked sort of about everything, but right from that get-go, I just felt better because I knew that you had his back and that you were going to make sure he was okay. I've just already did a lot of talking, but can you let the audience know a little bit, and can you remember back then to when you first met us and you first met Jake and what that was like for you?
Yeah, I can just remember you guys coming into the classroom and him being in that stroller. I think it was red. It was a red stroller, and he had that curly hair and just that look on his face. You guys were so positive, it felt like, and welcoming, and I feel like almost instantly we sort of clicked. For me, it was a little nerve-wracking at first with Jake because, like you said, he's not verbal or didn't really communicate in any way, but soon I felt very close to him, and just going through the activities of the day and all of that.
And I'm trying to remember, I don't think I even let him stay the full day in the beginning, right?
It was, I don't think he ever stayed full days. It was half days.
Yeah.
And then I would go and give everybody else their breaks. But I loved mornings.
Because I felt like 6 hours without me was like, I just didn't feel like that was something that I could do.
Yeah.
So, and then when I finally was like, okay, like it's time to go, I would go to like Starbucks right at exit 19 and I'd like get a coffee and then I would come back.
Go back, yeah. That one-way mirror was a really good thing.
It was a really great thing for me. So you worked at Prospect. So talk a little bit about yourself. Tell us how you ended up at Prospect and what you liked about that job.
I started working at Prospect. My stepmom actually worked in the office. And I was just recently out of high school. I wasn't really sure I wanted to go to college or anything like that, but I knew I loved children. So she helped get me in there. And I think I worked there for like a week or two before they put me with Jake. And I can just remember the day him like wheeling in and just being excited to have one child that I was like going to bond with and go throughout the day with, circle time, playing, all that stuff. And it was just really great, At first it was hard. There were a lot of behavioral issues in our classroom too. So it wasn't just special needs. But once I got to be with Jake, it changed the dynamic of the classroom for me for sure.
Jake has always been, or always was, the always like the sickest in the room, right? Like always the most severe. So he would go to school. Was it Monday through Friday?
I believe it was.
In theory, he was supposed to be there Monday through Friday. But they didn't have great seating for him, right? Like, so even though it was a special needs preschool program, he just required more than the rest of the kids.
Yes.
And it was always our battle, and it still became my, it continues to be my battle as I advocate for, obviously not Jake, but other kids, because it's kind of bullshit, right? Like, if you're supposed to be sending your kid to school, then the schools should be able to handle what you're sending, but they couldn't. So I remember on Mondays, I would arrive in my Volvo and I would take out his chair, remember? And I'd text you and I'd be like, can you
I'm
come?
here. Yeah.
So because the chair that we had was hugely heavy and very big and very bulky, but
we would both lift it out.
Yeah, we both had to like lift it and like put him in there and wheel it, and then we would bring it home on Friday, so we had it for the weekends. But he was always like I don't know how to describe it, but I mean, just always significantly sicker than everyone else.
Yes. I think you hit it on the head when you were like, he was the most severe, because it is true. There wasn't a lot of feedback, where other kids there was. And there were tons of kids in class that would love to come and sit on my lap with him in his chair and his tray, and we would play with Play-Doh and we would blow bubbles. There was a specific little boy, and I can't remember his name, but he loved Jake, and he would come sit on my lap and we would play Play-Doh, and we would take Jake's hands and, manipulate it. And
that's so funny, because I think you just took me back there, and I got I just kind of had a moment. But I think what would he call him? It wasn't Jakey. We would come in and he'd be like,
he would be so pumped.
He'd like freak out.
Yes.
And I remember like Brian and I would have this moment like,
it was Jake's best friend.
It was like Jake's best friend. And I was like, he's got a friend.
I think his name was Logan.
It could have been. Oh my God, that was great.
I'm pretty sure it was.
And then he also that year got invited to a birthday party. There were so many parts of that schooling program that were so amazing to me as Jake's mom, because it was this moment where even though I didn't always leave, and even though I was in that like spy room and all of those things, it was like this opportunity to be a mom, like a normal mom, like not. And even though he continued to be the sickest kid in the room, it was like this thing.
I think there's something to be said about, even though he was the sickest kid in preschool, none of those kids knew that. They didn't care. Logan didn't care if Jake could talk to him, laugh with him. He didn't care about any of that. He just loved Jake's presence and Jake being there near him.
So let's go. So we got to know you, and somehow I remember Brian and I were just like, we really like this girl. Like, I think that she can help us out. So then I remember I was kind of like, hey, do you ever want to like babysit or like mother's helper?
Yes, and I was going to stop working at Prospect because I was going back to college. I decided that I wanted to go to college and work with special needs children.
That's right.
Doesn't always work out that way, but in that moment, that was my plan.
Fast forward a little bit. You weren't at Prospect. The next year he had a different one-to-one, but you came over, and I want to say most afternoons, right? Mm-hmm. Because the big thing for me, and I've talked about this on the podcast, and you sort of had a firsthand view in this, it felt crazy, right? Because it felt like I'm Jake's mom and I'm Ethan's mom, and it was very like, instead of just being a mom, it was like different. And I was always very cognizant of how can I be good at both? And sometimes it just wasn't natural. So you came over at like 3:00 on most days so that I could go like pick up Ethan at school and let him like stay after school and do
play
in
the side of the school with his friends.
And
yes,
he could like he didn't have to like rush home, because I also didn't want him to like resent Jake, right?
Yeah.
So you would come and you'd stay like till 5 or 4:30 or whatever, and like kind of help, just stay with Jake.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I feel like you and Jake like bonded during that time.
Yeah.
Like I feel like you
he
guys
was
were
my
like,
guy.
you were like best buddies.
And my little dude. Yeah, I love him. We would read a lot, play with Play-Doh. And I would just like talk to him. He knew my deepest, darkest secrets, I think, and nobody else did. So
he was the best. You could tell him anything, and he was not telling secrets.
And his little scrunch nose and that curly hair. Like to this day, I cannot smell coconut oil and not think of him.
I love this conversation so much because there are so many people, and even people super close to me, like family members and like some of my best friends, but they couldn't see that part of Jake, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think that that's the piece that is missing in so many, I don't know, like even in social media, like I follow these other families, and I think this is the struggle, right? Like when you have a severely disabled or special needs or ill or, kind of whatever words we're using to describe kids like Jake.
Yeah.
people don't necessarily see that piece, like see that there are these like unique like personality parts, that they're real people and they have real feelings. And like, I just don't think a lot of people saw that in Jake.
No,
and
no.
it used to piss me off so much, right? Because I was like, that's my boy. Like,
I do have to say, like in the beginning, first meeting Jake, it is very intimidating because he didn't laugh or cry or talk or like, you know, looking in his eyes once you knew him, you knew if he liked it or he didn't. But for the most part, you didn't. And I just remember going home that first day and talking to my mom and being like, you know, I'm this kid, Jake's 1-18, and I'm just nervous. Like, I don't really know how to handle it. You know, I was still super young. And she was just like, play with him. Play with him like you would any other kid. Talk to him just like that. And like, that was the best advice she ever could have given me.
It was perfect advice because, you know, like you never let us know that you were worried or nervous or any of those things, you know? And to me, like that was such a gift because everything, like sometimes even family members were like, they were scared of Jake, right? Because it was scary and you didn't want anything to happen on your watch, right? Like, you know, and it was scary, but you never made us feel like you were scared of him. And I feel like that was always such a gift because I felt like, you know, you just played with him.
Yeah. I truly did feel like he played back with me sometimes, you know? He was just Jake. I don't really know how to explain that.
No.
But something about him was just like so wholesome and amazing.
So now all of this, I guess, is leading up to that day, right? Like, so it was December. You were at the house. It was just a regular day. Just a regular day.
I remember you had let me borrow a book, and I had been like reading little bits of it here and there.
What book was it?
I don't know. It was about some guy and like his struggles. I honestly can't remember because everything else just like
just blurred.
Yeah, spiraled. But I just remember reading this book. And
so I came home with Ethan. Jake was in the spica cast because he had broken
He had been
his femur.
really tired that day.
Yep.
He had been really tired. And I remember you being like, oh, let's try to keep him awake because I'm going to feed him when I get home. And I was like, all right. So we had just been like hanging out, me and him.
So you left, like, you know, because I would always kind of come home with Ethan and like kind of get settled and you would take off whenever.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'm getting the timing of this sort of screwed up because the whole thing kind of came undone pretty quickly. And I think you had left like an hour before anything had happened. But I remember sort of thinking like, can I run out the door and find you? Like I remember like sort of thinking like, Cait was just here. But so Brian was working, wasn't home. Like I had made some dinner or something for Ethan. We were like sitting down and the shit hit the fan. Like it was, without going into the details, I knew instinctively, like I knew that this was not good, right? Like I was like I remember when I talked to Brian, I'm like, Brian, something's wrong. And then I was like...
You talked to him before you realized something was
like I
super
told
wrong.
Ethan to call 911 and then I called, like it was so crazy. Like it just all happened so fast. So I'm like, Ethan, 5-year-old Ethan, calls 911. Everyone comes in the door. Like, you know, I mean, I guess it's the good part of where we live. The fire department was right there. Police department right there. They come in and then they're trying to like cut off the spica cast. And I'm kind of like, is that what we're focusing on right now? But obviously, what do I...
Does that have
I was like, and then I call Brian because I'm like, you know, and I remember like stepping out and just sort of being like, I think he died. And he was like, stop it. You know, it was like, he's like, don't say that, you know, and I don't know. I don't know if he, it was awful, right? When did we call you? Like, did I call you that night? Like, I feel like I was so twisted that I don't know. But I think you were one of the first calls we made.
You called me the next morning. I just remember waking up and you were calling me and I was like, oh, maybe they have plans later and I don't have to work today, you know, like totally unassuming. And I was alone in my apartment and you called me and you were just like, Jake passed away last night. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was just there yesterday. What do you mean? You know, and you're like, are you alone? And I was like, yeah, I am. And you're like, you should call your mom. Like, it's going to be okay. I'll be in touch with you. Like, we'll figure it out. And I was like, all right. I had never...
Did you call your mom?
I did call my mom. Yeah, I did. And Tessa like 75 times. But my mom came right over and I had never experienced death in my everyday life. My grandparents that had passed away were before I was born. My grandpa passed when I was in 3rd grade. Like, you know, none of that is affected my everyday life. And to not even expect it, I don't have to tell you.
No.
It was rough. It was rough. I definitely didn't go to school that day.
No, I, you know, those days afterwards, like I just remember making those calls, right? You know,
I can't even imagine.
I always thought of you so much because I just felt like you were such a part of like our family and our like normal, right? Like, and our normal still isn't, but it wasn't, I don't know, what does normal mean? Like, that's a stupid word anyways. But like our day-to-day was so different than most of the people that like Ethan went to school with and like the other moms I knew. Like our day-to-day was just so different. And there was part of me that, I don't know, like, and I still do it, right? Like I keep it separate because it's too heavy. It's too dark.
You
it's
have to
too like, right? You have to compartmentalize because otherwise like, then people don't want to be around that kind of energy, right? Like if they knew how dark I was, then I'd have like no friends. But I'm not, like, that's not all of me, right?
Yeah,
like all of me is like, I'm like dark, but then I'm also like, super goofy and super all
The
these
light
things
in the room as well.
Well, that's taking it a little
No,
far.
it's not. It's true.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is kind of coming off maybe a little corny, but I was listening to the Esme episode. Hillary, Esme's mom, said something to the effect of she loves the way I make Jake present in every room.
Yes.
So when you say like I'm the light in the room, I don't necessarily think that I'm the light in the room. I think that I think that Jake's the light in the room, and then that allows me to be like a functioning human again, right? I mean, I don't know if that makes sense, but like,
I think you have to find your light in the way to get through it.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
You know what I mean?
And
like, so when she
agree.
said that, and it's funny, like in the recording of that, I didn't take much of it, but I was re-listening to it today as I was like walking on my walking pad. And when she said that, it made my heart feel so good, right? Like it just like made me feel so good. And so you saying that, I feel like those two things are connected. Like,
They
that's
are.
what I was trying to do. Like
You and Jake are connected. You are one.
He still sometimes like comes to me in like sleep. Sometimes, not as much as he used to when he was little. But yeah,
I've always wanted him to come to me.
Has he come to you?
He has not.
Jakey.
He has not. A little stinker.
A little stinker. He will. You just haven't needed it yet.
Yeah.
Although
I think I might have needed it, but it's okay.
Along the way. So Jake passed away, and talk about the impact on your life as like sort of big sister, like mother character in your life. Like I feel like from the outside, I feel like it hit you hard, and it hit you hard over time. And I feel like
it really did.
You struggled for a while.
Without getting too deep, like anybody that knows me, like really knows me, knows about Jake and knows the impact he's had on my life. They know that I loved him, and I still love him, and it was super hard, and I am still full of grief about it, as I'm sure you are. And it was just something that hits you and you don't see it coming. I thought I was on a path, but then I wasn't on the path. And it's like, what do you do with this? I love Jake, but I'm not like his family or like his mom or his dad or his brother. And like for me being young like that, it was like, what level of grief is like appropriate? Do you know?
Yeah.
It was a confusing and hard time.
So what was the timeline of it? Because mine, it kind of blurs for me, but like you moved to California.
I moved to California.
How far?
So Jake passed away. I worked a couple of odd end jobs after that for a few years, I would say, maybe like 5 or 6. And then my sister lived in California.
That's right.
So I was like, I'm going to take this trip across the country. And there was like a little daycare in her town, which I went to work at. And I lived there for about 2 years or so. And then I wanted to come home. I missed my friends and all that stuff. California was like the change that I needed, I think, to like get a grip.
Reset.
Like, see where I'm going, see what the plan is, And I moved home and I started grooming with my best friend. She went to grooming school, taught me everything she knows. And now I'm a groomer and a mother, and I love it all.
We'll go to when you met Bill.
Yes.
And I remember your wedding. And I remember it was such a beautiful wedding.
Thank you.
And I was sad we had to leave early, but it was also homecoming.
Yes.
Ethan was a freshman, and I was very nervous about like not being around.
I remember that. I was so thankful that you made it to the ceremony, and I could at least hug you. Like Jake was there with me that day.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You had in that one room.
Yes.
It was so beautiful, I thought, and it was so nice. It was like this little table with people who you felt like should have been at the wedding but couldn't be at the wedding. And there was like Jake front and center, like a picture of him. And I just like Brian and I were like, oh my God.
I hoped you didn't think
no,
it was
I
weird.
I thought it was beautiful. We thought it was so beautiful.
He
like
is a very important part of who I am.
Like as Jake's parents, like it just, I mean, the fact that like he's obviously a huge important part of who we are, but the fact that it just speaks volumes that he was as amazing as we thought he was, because he had impact on people that he didn't have to have impact on. And I don't know, we loved being at your wedding, and then we loved seeing like, that was just such a great little surprise.
Yeah, I think Jake changed me for the better. I'm a more compassionate, understanding person. I feel like I do hold on to the moments more. especially with my own children. It's 3 a.m. and I'm rocking my baby and I'm like, oh, I'm so tired. But it's also like, it's not going to be like this forever.
So let's go there. Let's talk about, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, but so you're a mom now, like, and Theo is 4.
He's 3.5.
Three and a
He'll be
half.
4 in
3.5.
October.
And his middle name is Jake.
It is Theodore Jake.
And I remember when you called me and was like, is this okay? And I think I probably started crying, or if I didn't start crying, I did shortly after, because what a testament and what a...
I hope again that wasn't weird.
No, we love it. I mean, it's just so
Jake really is a super important part of who I am as a person. And I just wanted to pay tribute to that. I remember having conversations with you about how you chose Jake's name and why it was Jake Alexander. And you were like, we just wanted a really strong, solid first name and not Jacob, Jake.
Yeah, he wasn't Jacob. He was
straight, just Jake. And that's always stuck with me. And I want my son to feel empowered and strong and brave and all these things that I think Jake was. And so he knows who Jake is, and we talk about it. He's got a picture of Jake in his room with his birthday crown,
Oh, we didn't even talk about that. Okay, so I'm going to pivot very quickly, because I can't believe I didn't address this. Jake has passed. In the beginning, I twice a day was at the graveside, every morning, every night. And if I didn't, it was mental, I couldn't get out of it. Over the last 13 years, that has evolved, and I have gotten, sometimes I'm there all the time, sometimes I'm not. We planted trees. I mean, we were we got our ass in trouble
Christmas
with the
tree thing.
Yeah, because and then they were you can't just plant trees in a cemetery.
Watch
and
me
I was
do it.
Well, I'm going to.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
You're gonna dig it up? Try me.
And then the tree got bigger, and then we realized that we were
tie myself to it. They're not cutting it down.
we were wackadoo. But then
it's
so
not
now
ridiculous.
it was we were very themey, and there was always all the stuff, and every time we traveled, we had to bring him something.
We got to get through it.
We definitely have simmered down a little bit with that. Not always. We still I try to keep it looking good, but I'm not as
it looks
crazy. But thank you. But every year on his birthday, without fail, a year has not been missed. And because you did this when he was alive. So on his birthday, Cait would always make him a birthday crown. And she would make this beautiful crown, and she would have a theme, and it would have the number, whatever age he was. In bright colors and literally a theme every single time. And
I try to go with what's happening in Ethan's life. That's usually and if there's nothing I can really put my finger on, I'm like, oh, we'll just color it crazy.
It's so awesome. And so not a year has passed. He's not ever had a birthday crown.
Yeah, I feel like it's therapeutic for me. And now having Theo old enough, and he loves arts and crafts. So now he's going to help me decorate. Every year, we talk about Jake. We sing him happy birthday. We bring him the birthday crown, all that.
And I will say, as Jake's mom, there have been a couple people along the way who used to say things. And this is where I think it's always dangerous when you say things. And I'm certainly capable of it. But people will be like, I'm going to bring flowers to Jake every month for the rest of my life. And then they don't, right?
Yeah, you can't commit to that.
And they shouldn't have committed to it, because I remember, because I'm also, a little crazy. Well, so I remember those people who said they were going to do that, and they don't.
Yeah.
And I don't like it. I don't, it doesn't mean I'm not nice to you. It doesn't mean I'm not your friend.
Right.
But it does mean in the back of my head.
You hold on to that. You know
said something, and it was me. It's not about me. It's about my boy.
Yeah.
It pisses me off.
Yeah.
But you just do it. And I just love that so much. You put it in the plastic bag in case it rains.
Because it's almost always raining. But I will tell you what, it will be raining, and I will go there, and the wind will be whipping, and I'll get over there, and I'll be like, okay, Jake, can you just stop the wind so I can take this picture of you with your birthday crown? And it happens.
Because he's a good boy.
It happens. That keeps me connected. And I will tell you something that you probably don't know, but when I would babysit for Heath and Jeff, every time I was done, I would go to the cemetery and I would read Jake a story.
Oh.
And the whole time while I was nannying for them, I would always do that. I was like, I can't go to Saratoga and not see Jake. And after a while, it kind of got a little weird because, You're like, hey. People would come up and put flowers on other other headstones, and I'm like reading this,
Story.
laying here crying, reading the story, So,
But I love that, right? Like, I just feel like
it made me feel closer to him.
no, and I love that, like, and you never said I'm going to do this every year for the rest of his life, but you just do it. And that means, I don't know, it just means so much to me, right? Like,
Thank you.
because it's just,
I'm glad.
and we have, like, so, you put them in the plastic bags, and then I always have that Jake cake there,
Yeah.
which is the best
Yeah.
thing ever.
Yeah. And some balloons. There's
And
always balloons.
and there's always, whatever I decide to bring. And we keep it for like a week or so, like usually till like Mother's Day, or usually after Mother's Day, because we won't even talk about Mother's Day, but I hate Mother's Day.
Yeah, I bet.
It is not my favorite day.
I bet.
But we kind of keep it there through then, and then we bring it. And I have every single one of those crowns.
I was wondering.
Of course I do. Every single one of them. We keep them up on the third floor, and that, like, I have all of them.
The third floor. Ethan and I used to have so much fun up there.
Well, he built forts, the whole
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
He loves his third floor fort. I think probably still.
Right. I think one time you tried to get me to live there.
I think I did too. I was like, you sure you don't want to just live there?
Just move up there. It's fine. There's a back door.
I was like, I won't bother you. Just live there. So we went off on that tangent. I'm so glad you brought up the crowns, though, because that is such a,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like the crowns are huge. So let's go back to parenting your boys.
Yes.
And how do you think, good and bad, because I'm sure there's sort of some negatives about like what you experienced with Jake and knowing that he passed and knowing his story. Like, how does that impact you as a mom, do you think? And then like good ways and bad ways, because I'm sure there's both, right? I don't know.
Yeah. I think in a good way, it's, again, I think I talked about this before, is just like, I feel like I can sit in the moment more, where like it's easy to be upset that, your baby's crying and he won't sleep and he doesn't like this food, or you know what I mean? But it just being in the moment and like holding him and just remembering that it's not going to be that way forever, and things do change when you don't think they're going to. It's really made me appreciate what is in the moment. It also has the downside, like you said, I had massive anxiety. Your baby makes a weird sound, or like those newborn baby sounds. When you're a first-time mom, you don't, like, but you don't know. And then your baby's sleeping next to you. And I feel like I didn't sleep for a very long time, because it's just like, are you choking? Are you breathing? Are you alive? Are you okay? If I feed you this food now that we're eating, are you going to choke? Are you going to be, These things were like, I think it's just thinking of the most detrimental thing that could happen, because it has happened to somebody in my life, and it's the realization that it's real.
No, I think so many times you're protected as a parent, right? Because you bad things can happen, but you don't know they can happen.
Right.
And I think I've talked about this before, but I remember when Jake had his seizures, right, and got sick, I thought that was my bad thing.
Yeah.
Like I was like, okay, I'm safe now.
Yeah.
Two bad things aren't going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then he died, right? Like,
Yeah.
and then I mean, it definitely, in fact, impacted my parenting of Ethan for a while. I think, and I'm sure Ethan would probably have a lot to say about it at a different point. And I think now I'm a little, I don't want to say healthier, but like a little bit like, time, like I'm a little better at it. But, when he was a teenager in those teenage years, and when they're doing stuff and you're worried.
Driving
and
a car
or going out or
late,
like drinking or doing any of those things. And Brian would kind of be like, you need to get a grip, because like you can't keep him in a box. But I just was like raw, because I was like, I'm not protected, like,
Right.
like, and then
You're vulnerable.
Because I can tell you that I came through losing Jake, and I feel I've said it to many people. I've said it on this podcast, like I'm a better version of myself. Like I am, I've taken a lot from him, and I like who I am now. And I have managed to live as like Ethan's mom and Jake's mom and live with it. But there's zero chance of being able to do that again. I don't even know how.
You made it through.
No, like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like now I've just created more anxiety for you. So
Oh, it's okay. No.
There's a little gift for you.
There's nothing that you can say that I haven't already spiraled into a hole about. I can tell you that.
No, but it's just so like, right? Like you just feel like you should be protected more in this life.
Yeah.
You're just not. So it's
or
about
at least have a
figuring out-
notification that like, this thing's going to go so awry in your life and change it in so many ways that you don't even see coming. But it's just...
Yeah.
That's death, right? It's
That
like,
is death.
It is surprising in the most ruthless ways.
So, I mean, I hate getting like when I say things that are sort of like very cliche and stupid, but I do sometimes think like you deal with it and what else are you going to do, right? Like you have to deal with it.
You
like,
have to take it. Yeah.
And you put one foot in front of the other and you figure it out. And, And that's
Sometimes
like this
it's not
family's
so
doing.
pretty.
And sometimes it's really ugly. Like sometimes it's hideous. I'm going to bring it back to what you were saying because this is dark, but out of the darkness does come the light, right?
Yeah.
Like out of that comes like appreciate the moments, take the trip, like do the thing. And I think I don't always do a great job of like compartmentalizing or boundaries or like whatever, like, because I can get wrapped up and be like, oh my God, I have this busy week. I have to do all the things and I have to do them late and I want everything done right now. And some of that is like self-preservation because when I'm busy, I'm not dark, right? Like when I'm busy, I'm like on my A game. I do think that there is that like breathe and take a pause and take the time. And
which is so hard sometimes,
it's
right?
so hard sometimes,
It's
but I
easy
do
to
think
just
it's
put
so
your head
important.
down and do it.
Because frankly, like if I said I'm going to do something and I don't do it until tomorrow, is the world going to end? No. It's not, Heather. Nothing you're doing is that important.
It's
life
all
will go
very
on.
important.
It's very important in my head for sure. You know what? Like just hang out with your kid and take the thing and have fun. And
even though he's throwing this crazy temper tantrum because he's 3 years old and he wants to eat this candy that you're not going to let him eat, like you just gotta let it go. Yeah, take it for what it is.
How is your relationship with like Bill? Because Bill didn't know Jake. But he knows us.
Yes, Bill's very supportive. I think that, he would have obviously absolutely loved Jake. He keeps me tied together, I think. He came into my life when I needed him and I didn't know it, He definitely brings a sense of like solitude and wholeness to my life, if that makes sense. I spent a long time being lost and confused and kind of mad at the world. What is life? Because something so terrible can happen. But then seeing, honestly, I know we're talking about Bill, but seeing you in that moment, those moments of me feeling so terrible and like, I know how terrible you obviously were feeling, but to see you like pull together and make something so great of something that was so awful, you personally helped me get through that, I felt like, even from afar.
Well, I just love having you in my life still because there's not a lot of people in my life that A, knew Jake and B, knew him like you did, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's just, like Steve. That's why we love Steve so much, right?
Steve.
Like he's Brian's best friend from kindergarten, Ethan's godfather, Jake's godfather. But like those friends of ours that we like travel with and do all the like crazy fun things with, like they knew Jake, and there's just a lot of people in my life now that didn't. And I don't know, there's part of me like it hurts my heart, right?
Right.
Like,
and you can explain him till you're blue in the face, but unless you knew him and felt
frankly,
him.
unless he puked on you.
Yeah. Yeah. That little snarl and his little
face.
nose scrunch.
People would be like, oh, how do you know what he wants? And I'm like, you would know.
Yeah. Right.
So let's go back to when you were talking about the time after Jake died and sort of your grief process. And you said something to the effect of like, you didn't know if you were even like grieving appropriately or something.
Yeah.
I can say that from our perspective, you were one of those people that, well, you weren't family, you were family. Because there were very few people that I trusted with Jake.
Right.
And certainly that I trusted with Jake with me not home.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I knew, and you were young, so I just always, like, I felt so protective of you. Like, I remember when I didn't know how to.
I was freshly 21.
You were a baby. Mm-hmm. I didn't know how to make, like, part of me just wanted to make that okay for you. So there was, so it's interesting to hear the other side, because I was like, I didn't even know if I was appropriate. So, so talk about that.
I think for me too, is like the appropriateness, I remember texting Brian early on and being like, I want to be there for Heather, but I don't know how. Like, I don't know. And I myself was just like a crying mess, How do you handle a grief like that when you've never dealt with that? And I'm sure I didn't handle it the most graceful way. But I feel like grief, like I think you've said before, is like it doesn't really go away. You just learn how to deal with it a little better and like almost incorporate it into your life in a way without trying to be super dark. Yeah.
I feel like you carried it with you for a really long time.
I still carry it with me. Yeah. I still carry it with me. It's just recently, within the last like 5 years or so, that I can actually talk about Jake without crying. Not even out of like devastation, but just like the love that I have for him and the way that it ended and just like all that. I remember like being thankful, like you said, like you came home and I left. And I remember I almost left, but I came back and I gave him the kiss on the forehead.
Like you did come back that day.
I did. I was about to walk out the door and I was like, oh, I forgot to kiss Jake goodbye. And you were already feeding him on the couch.
The timing of that keeps like messing with me because that must be what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
in those recent, like the beginning days, grief is all encompassing. And it's like, where am I? What am I doing? Like, am I being annoying? Should I be texting you? Should I, what can I do? Like, do you blame me? Because I
Oh,
had
God, I
been with
never
him
blamed
all
you.
day and I didn't notice anything was wrong with him.
That never entered my mind. And to be honest, I hate that it happened on my watch, but I am grateful that it happened on my watch because I would never have been able to forgive or move on had it not happened on my watch, right? Like, because the only person I hated and fought with and despised in those days was myself. And I am glad that I did not have to put that burden on anyone else. People are always like, how did you and Brian survive? Brian and I survived because it wasn't on his watch. Because I can tell you if it was on his watch, we wouldn't have survived.
Mm-hmm. Because then it's like, if I was there, I could have done it. I could have fixed it.
I know it now and I knew it then. I was the number one person who could take care of that kid. Like I knew his, so, I don't love that it was on my watch, but it's the only way that I just have to deal with my own inner demons over that. Like I don't have to share that with anyone else.
Yes.
So it never entered my mind at all to have any.
Something was just swallowed me whole my whole life.
No, I wish you asked me earlier. Zero blame. In fact, there's ways that I was grateful that he was with you because I knew that, kind of like what I was saying earlier, there were other people I wouldn't let feed him. I wouldn't let
and I was just
take him
learning
out of
how
the
to
chair.
feed him
You were,
too.
and you were, you were giving him his bottle and stuff. I trusted you, and I knew, some ways because there's other people in lives that, right, like they think they can do it better, or they, I fed a baby before, or
but he wasn't typical.
He wasn't typical, and
I remember being so nervous.
And you were like, but you listened so well, and you paid attention to the that I said.
Yeah.
And in this situation, like, yes, when it's Ethan and you want to feed him a little differently, it's fine.
Right.
But with Jake, it wasn't fine.
It's one way.
It's one way, and you do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that you did that. There was never ever a second of blame or thought or any of that. And in fact, I love that in his last day he was with you. Like, in fact, that gave me comfort and joy more than it gave me. Like, there was never a thought. I wish you asked me that sooner.
Oh my God.
That was a long ways.
Yeah, let me just walk right up to you. Excuse me.
Do you hate me?
Do you hate me?
No, never. You're
Yeah.
stuck with me.
Thank goodness. I would just have to stalk you from afar. I have my Ask Heather Anything questions.
You actually have one?
I have two.
You have two.
Where's your favorite place to vacation? Because the Straughters know how to vacation.
We do vacation pretty well. That's a very hard one because that depends on like my mindset, right?
Yeah.
My go-to answer, I think, for many years, although it is not anymore, would be like the Rock House.
Mm-hmm.
Been going to the Rock House for 20 years.
And where is that?
In Negril, Jamaica.
Yes.
It's just chill. It's not like one of those all-inclusive resorts because I'm like that's not my vibe. It's just super low-key. Like you just, there's a spa and there's great food and you jump off the cliffs and you drink rum punch and, various things all day.
And do you feel close to Jake there?
I do feel close to Jake there. The majority of people are people like Brian and I who've been going for 20, 25 years. And it was like our vibe when we were young. And now it's like still. So it's got this, it's really just a bunch of like people who like the low-key thing.
How did you explain death to Ethan in a way that he could understand it? Since he was so young.
I wish that I had a good answer for that. Like, I don't know that we did that well. And it's a little bit the way that we parent and the way that we've always parented since Jake got sick is just very authentically. Like, I live my life and I am who I am and I've always been that in front of my kids, right? Like, I've never been the like, I have to act this way in front of my kid.
Right.
And I think that in those moments, I've talked about it on this podcast before like that. And I think this, like Jake died on a Wednesday and Thursday we brought Ethan to school. It was the best decision we could make at that time.
Right.
The one thing I do think that we did do right is we just made Jake present, right? Like we, cheers to Jake. Like that's a thing. Like we did it at the launch party. We used to have the party, like the cheers to Jake cocktail parties. It was a way that we kind of kept him present, kept him around the dinner table, and whether we were cheersing with water or with wine, or it didn't matter. Like a cheers was a cheers to Jake. We've always kept Jake at a seat at the table.
Yes.
And I think for Ethan, that has
important.
helped a little bit.
Yeah.
So, Cait, I love you so much, as I think you know. And having this conversation with you has really meant a lot to me. So I'm so glad that you came in. I'm glad that you are a part of a place of yes. And I'm just so glad that you're still a part of my life.
Thank you for having me, and you will never get rid of me.
Amen to that. Happy about that.
Thank you so much. Thank you for letting me be a part of Jake's life, because it truly has affected me in amazing, positive ways.
No, you are a big part of happy memories for us. So thank you for that. Thank you for listening to A Place of Yes. Please follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Leave us a thumbs up or leave us a comment. We would appreciate all that you can do. If you really like this episode, please share it with a friend or two. For more information and to leave us any feedback, please reach out to us at jakeshelpfromheaven.org.